Okay, hi, this is how you do a crazy calculation quantitative chemistry question in paper 1. So, by the way, they're either going to be worth usually 4 marks, 5 marks, or 6 marks. And there are going to be kind of situations where you can understand how you're going to get those marks. So understand what you're going to do. It's usually the same steps, no matter what kind of question. So I'm going to show you the basic 3-step way to answer any types of these questions. And I'm going to show you where those extra marks will come from. So the most basic would be a 4-mark question. It's pretty standard. They give you a mass of something. They give you an equation, and then they say, find the mass of something else. So you're going to do those 3 steps to solve the unknown mass. That's your basic. It's usually 4 or 5 marks. It will definitely be 5 marks if they give you an equation that isn't balanced. So you'll get 1 mark for balancing the equation. And then from there, you do your same 3 steps as what I've just said. You essentially just need to take what you know and solve for what you don't know, what you kind of have versus what you need to calculate from the question. And then the hardest one, aka the one that's worth the most marks, is your 6-mark question. Now, they're usually going to be pretty nice with 5 and 6-mark questions in that they're going to give you your relative atomic and relative formula masses, aka your AR, your MR, the number that comes from the periodic table. So usually you won't have to do the calculation for that when it's a 5 or 6-mark question. So you're not getting marks from that. They will usually also give you a balanced equation if it's a 6-mark question, because if it's a 6-mark question, they're usually asking about what's called the limiting reactant. So with a limiting reactant, that means which reactant is going to limit the amount of stuff I make at the end. So very similar to like if I am baking a cake, if I want to bake a giant cake, I could buy a bag of flour and I could have unlimited flour. But if I only have 3 eggs in my pantry, I can only make a cake that tastes good or is the size that 3 eggs will allow. My 3 eggs limit how much cake I can make. I have unlimited flour, but I have a limited amount of eggs. So sometimes what they ask is in chemistry, which one is the limiting reactant? Which one is the thing that's going to prevent me from making an unlimited amount of product? So I need to find the one that's smaller. I need to find the one that is limited. So let's do that now in the context of a question. So I'll tell you where a 4-mark, 5-mark, 6-mark kind of standard vibe will be in the case of this hardest question. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. And I hope it's still recording. I'm not really sure if it's still recording. I really hope so. So just ignore me. Ignore me if it is working and I'm just freaking out for no reason. Okay. So as you can see, this is a 6-mark question, and they've actually asked me down here what my limiting reactant is. So this is the longest, most involved way this is ever going to be. This is the worst of the worst. And it's actually not that bad because it still uses those same 3 steps. It's just I need to make an extra step to find out what my limiting reactant is. And that's where the extra marks are coming from. So I always think about things in terms of what I have. I have 108 grams of aluminium. I'm going to give that a symbol because I want to make sure that I'm looking at like similar things. Okay. And it's going to react with 1.21 kilograms. Well, right away I can see that I don't like kilograms. So I'm going to times it by 1,000 so that I can get everything in the same unit. And I want grams in this unit. So it's going to be 1,210 grams of copper chloride. And again, I'm going to switch to symbols, CuCl2. And it's going to produce copper, and this aluminium chloride. Cool, cool, cool. They've given me a balanced equation. That's very nice of them. So I know I'm not going to get a mark from this. If it was worth 5 marks, they might say balance the equation. If it was worth 4 marks, they might already give this to me, or a previous question would have been balancing the equation. So sometimes you get marks for having a balanced equation. They've done it for me. Thanks. What are they asking me to calculate? They are asking me to calculate the maximum mass of copper. So this is the thing that I'm ultimately going to need to calculate. So this is the thing that I want, the thing that I need, and I need it in grams. That's the big hint as to why we converted this kilograms into grams. Okay, we want everything to be in grams. So it's also saying determine the limiting reactant. Okay, I'm going to show you when and how we do that. So we're not going to worry too much about that. Now, the next nice thing that they've given me is they've given me my relative atomic / formula masses. So this is the stuff that comes from the periodic table. So if you didn't have this, you would look at the periodic table and you would get your numbers from that. Now, obviously, when it's a compound, we don't have compounds in the periodic table, but you would see Cu, which would be 63.5, and you would see Cl, and you would times it by 2 because it says 2 Cls, and you would find that Cl is actually 35.5, times it by 2, you get 71, you add it to 63.5, you get 134.5. They've done that for you. But if you had to calculate your own MR, this is where your periodic table gives you your missing number. Okay, so your periodic table can be your best friend. So with that said, oh, I am recording. Okay, good. Sorry, just wanted to make sure. So with that said, I've kind of done all of my prep. I am now ready to begin. So whether it's a 4 mark, 5 mark, 6 mark question, 3 mark question, I don't know why it would be 3, but it could be, you are always going to do the same 3 steps. Okay. Step 1. Step 1 is you are going to get it down from what you know in grams into moles. So find the moles of what you know, aka the thing that you were given at the beginning. They have told you a mass at the beginning of aluminium and copper chloride. I'm actually going to switch this to pink so that you can see it was from the beginning. Okay, so find the moles of what you know. Now, if you're not sure how to do moles, 2 options. Option 1 is if you have something from the periodic table, the unit is grams per mole. If you don't like doing things with units, I feel sorry for you, but I understand. If you don't like that and you want a nice, easy way to remember how to do mole calculations, you can think of a very cute Mr. Mole. Mr. Mole lives underground. And I'm using G for grams per mass. So instead of saying M, and M, that's gross. I say Mr. Mole lives underground. And then I can use my triangle. So step 1 is find moles. So it's going to be grams of what I was given over moles. Over MR, excuse me. And again, I don't know why this went blue. I'm so sorry. I said it was going to be pink, didn't I? So find the moles of what you know. So in this case, this is what makes it a 6 mark question. This is where I'm getting this limiting reactant from. Do you see how they've given me 2 masses? They've given me mass of aluminium and they've given me mass of copper chloride. I need to figure out which reactant I'm going to use for the next steps. So that's where this 6 mark question comes from. If it was a 4 mark question, it would just give me one of them. It wouldn't give me both masses. So it would be very easy. You would just go, whatever they've given you, turn it into moles. Okay. In this case, we have 2 masses. I don't know which reactant to use. So I need to find the moles of both because I know the mass of both. So we're going to go moles of Al first. So moles is grams divided by MR. Okay, so grams divided by how much it weighs in terms of molar mass. Okay, so grams of aluminium is 108 G. And it is 27 as its molar mass. Now, yes, it says AR, I know, but don't worry. AR and MR are essentially the same thing because A stands for atom because I only have one thing, and M stands for molecule, which means I have more than, like I have a compound, okay? So, I'm going to divide those two numbers, okay? And when I take 108 divided by 27 grams per mole, the grams cancel out, leaving me moles. That's exactly what I wanted to find. That, my friends, equals 4. If you put it into the calculator, it gives you 4 moles of Al. I like labeling everything because I like knowing what my numbers mean. Okay. Now, I was also given a mass of copper chloride, so I should figure out what the moles of that is as well. So CuCl2, and I know that this should be a lower 2, obviously. Okay, but I'm just typing it up, so it should be a little 2. The mass of that was 1210 grams, and the MR for that is CuCl2 is 135, excuse me, 134.5. If I could type, it would help. And again, that's from the periodic table, so I know that that's how many grams per mole it is. If you don't like units, then don't worry about it. But I think it's very helpful to see that my grams divided by grams cancels out. I'm left with moles. I know I've done the right thing. If you put this into your calculator, it equals 8.996 moles of CuCl2. And again, you could round that up to 9. They will accept that, but just leave it as it is. Now, which one is the limiting reactant? So you find the one that is the smaller number, because that will depend on, or sorry, your product, how much you make at the end will depend on how much you started with. Very much like a recipe. If I have unlimited flour, technically I can make unlimited cakes. But if I have a very limited amount of eggs, I can only make a cake a certain size. I can only make a cake with 3 eggs because I was limited by having a small amount of eggs. So hopefully you can see what the smaller number is. It is Al. It is 4 moles of Al. So right away, I'm not going to write it down anywhere else. I'm going to put it on the answer line. My limiting reactant is Al. And I can clearly see that. I've put a box around it to help visualize to the examiner that this is the important one. If you do it this way, you don't have to do anything else. If you put it on the answer line right there, you don't have to do anything else. By the way, just doing this gives you 4 marks pretty much already. Okay, so even if you're not sure if you can get through the whole thing, doing this little first step, which is dividing your mass that you were given by your AR, gives you a nice amount of marks. You get another mark for Al, you get another mark for comparing them. So right away, I'm going to say you get 3 marks, but some examiners might give you up to 4 depending on if they're reading the mark scheme correctly. So any other question, whether it was 5 marks or 4 marks, you would do this first step. The thing that made this a 6 mark one was that you had 2. You had to do this first step twice, and then you had to pick the one that was the smaller value, okay? But normally, you do this step, you get an answer. You get something moles of something, okay? Then you use that answer into the next step. So we use this number into our next step. So I'm gonna do a different color, step 2. In blue, okay? Oh, I didn't even do that, right. Step 2 in blue, okay. You don't actually need to learn that, but anyways. Step 2. You now know moles. You have moles of what you were given, so moles of what you know, but you want to get something that you don't know. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take moles of what we know and we're gonna convert them into moles of the thing that we need to eventually calculate. So in this case, it's gonna be the copper. I don't care about aluminium. I don't care about copper chloride. I don't even care about aluminium chloride. What I care about is the maximum mass of copper. So in order to figure out copper, I need to know the moles of copper. So for step 2, every single time, whether it's a 4, 5, or 6 mark question, it doesn't matter. Always, 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 step 2 is use the molar ratio to find moles of what you need. Okay, the thing that you need to calculate. So step 2, we're gonna use the molar ratio to find the moles of what you need. Where does this molar ratio come from? It comes from the balanced equation. Okay, so you don't worry about anything else, you just worry about the balanced equation, okay? Right, so I'm going to take that 4 moles that I calculated from step 1, okay? Here I am bringing it down here, I guess I should bring it down there, okay? There we go. And I'm going to just rewrite it, 4 moles of Al. The reason I don't care about copper chloride is because it's not the limiting reactant. So I'm only doing this step with the limiting reactant. So that makes it 100 times easier. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to times it by my molar ratio. Now, you totally know what ratios are. Okay, everyone is very good at doing ratios now. But in chemistry, I don't like looking at it as a number dot dot another number. It doesn't tell me anything about which one I multiply, which one I divide. And that's scary. You need to know what order the molar ratio is in. So I need to know which numbers I'm putting down, and I need to be able to put them down in the right order. It's not always a smaller number over a bigger number. It could be the bigger over the smaller. So how do you know what number to use? Well, I always put the thing that I need, in this case copper, on the top. If I put moles of copper on top, I will get moles of copper. And I don't want moles of Al. I don't want moles of Al. So on the bottom, I will put moles of Al because we've learned from maths that if I have something at the top that is equal to something on the bottom, they cancel out. So my moles will cancel out of Al. I will no longer have aluminium. I will now have everything in terms of copper, which is exactly what I need. So what is the number in front of Al from the balanced equation? It's 2. What is the number in front of Cu from the balanced equation? It's 3. And now I just do some maths. What is 4 times 3 divided by 2? And you can put that into your calculator as a fraction if you wanted, but again, you can just take it bit by bit, numerator to numerator. 4 times 3 is 12. Now divide that by 2, you get 6. 6 moles of, what was it? Oh, the only thing that isn't crossed out, Cu. And that is exactly what I need. I need copper. So that's why I figured out the moles of Cu. There is your 4th mark out of 6. So just being able to use the molar ratio gives you an extra mark. If you do this wrong, oh well, they can only deduct 1 mark from you. So even if you got this wrong, you would still get maybe 5 out of 6 if you did the rest of the question correct. So now we're on to step 3, which is find mass of what we need. It is always going to be this, usually. If it's a 4, 5, or 6 mark question, they're going to give you mass of something and they're going to ask for mass of something else. Okay, so step 3, we are now finally going to find the mass of what we need. Okay, and how am I going to do that? Well, I have moles. So again, use what you know. I have moles. So mass equals, we're going to use some sort of equation. Oh, what does mass equal? Mr. Mole. Okay, well, I've got moles. 6 moles of Cu, because I've just calculated that, right? We will always use it in the next step. And now I just times it, Mr. Mole. So I'm going to times it by the MR. Oh gosh, it's not an MR. What do I do? Oh, it's an AR. That's totally fine. Here it is right here. The number from the periodic table is 63.5. And that's grams per mole, as I've told you before. Oh my gosh, my leg's asleep and it hurts so bad. Ah! Moles will cancel out, leaving me with grams. That's exactly what I wanted. What is 6 times 63.5? It is 381. What is my unit? Well, they've given it to me, but I just want to double check. The only thing I haven't crossed out is grams. And there you go. There is 1, 2, 3, 4 marks, 5 marks for this equation, 6 marks for the right answer. Now, if this was not a limiting reactant question, this would be 1 for this, 2 for this, 3 for this, possibly 4 for the right answer. If it was a 5-mark question, it might be that you need to do the balanced equation. And that's it, okay? So that is the hardest it can be. It's actually not that hard. It's always the same 3 steps. Find moles. How do you do that? You divide by MR. Then multiply it by a fraction, aka the molar ratio, what you want on the top, what you have on the bottom, so that it cancels out. And then finally, you then reverse what you did in step 1, which is you now multiply it by your MR to get the mass. So you divide by MR times by the molar ratio, and then multiply by MR to get the mass. And it's always those 3 steps. It is always going to be, they give you a mass. You then divide it by a number from the periodic table-ish, aka, your MR. Whether that's directly from the periodic table or whether you've had to do a little side calculation. Then you always times it by the molar ratio, which is the big numbers in front from the balanced equation. Not the little numbers, not any other numbers, just the big numbers in front of your compounds and molecules in the balanced equation. That's always step 2. And step 3 is essentially doing the opposite of what you did in step 1. So instead of dividing by MR, you're going to times by MR. And then that is going to cancel out the moles and give you the mass. Now, again, you might get marks for balancing the equation. You might get marks for having to calculate the MRs yourself. Okay, so this can be as simple as a 4-mark question for step 1, 2, 3, and a right answer. It can be a 5-mark for balancing an equation, step 1, 2, 3, and a right answer. It can be a 5-mark from getting a balanced equation, but calculating MR, step 1, 2, 3, and a right answer. Or it can be 6 marks for finding the moles, determining the one that's smaller for limiting reactant, and then step 2, 3, and a right answer. Find moles, that's 2 because you do it twice, then limiting reactant, and then step 2, 3, and right answer. There's your 6 marks. Okay, so I hope that has been helpful. I hope that it makes sense as to what these steps are and where to get these answers from, okay? So this should be straightforward. If it's not, don't worry. Try and remember step 1, 2, 3, okay? Find moles, molar ratio, find mass. So divide by MR, molar ratio, times by MR. And remember that you can always put it in a triangle with, very cute, Mr. Mole lives underground, and the G stands for grams, aka mass. Okay, so I hope that helps and you enjoy doing your test. And if not, you can always look at this video many more times before your real exam. So don't freak out. Bueno. All right. Bye.